Hey guys, welcome to today's episode of Talking Decon. To my left here is Steve Miller, our Director of Marketing and Media. And then we got another Steve Wolfe here, who's our franchise business consultant. And I think you're going to take it off today. What do you got?
Yeah, so my guy is pretty interesting. One of the things that I think is kind of frightful for myself is when you go to somebody that is supposed to help heal you or take care of you, and they're the person that's causing the death. So I have Dr. Death for our story today. Harold Shipman has 250 assumed bodies that he has murdered. He was convicted of 15 of those murders, though.
Wow.
It's a big number.
Yeah.
That's a big discrepancy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so the reason why the discrepancy is multiple times people were assuming that he caused these murders and the police weren't able to convict him. So because he's a doctor, he was forging their death certificates and he was getting them incinerated. So
he gets to cover up everything. Yeah, no evidence.
That's kind of brilliant.
It is.
There's no body to do an autopsy after he's already signed off on cause of death.
Sure.
Absolutely.
So what year is all this taking place?
Yeah, so his crime started in 1975 and ran all the way to 1998, so 23 years.
Whoa.
That's wild, man.
Where at? Where's this at?
So this is in England, Hyde area in England is where all this happened. So his method of choice to kill his patients was diamorphine, which is morphine, I guess it's a two-part morphine. Medical heroin is what they call it. Okay. So it's for extreme pain management.
Like post-surgery or something.
Correct. Exactly what it is. And the two main things that they say that diamorphine is used post-surgery and then cancer pain relief.
Okay.
So
I always like too that it's like, yeah, this heroin and morphine isn't quite enough.
Exactly.
We got to take that up a notch. Nothing bad could happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So they were talking about like large doses of diamorphine. What it causes is dizziness, vomiting, and then failure of bodily functions. So
okay, hold on. Let's back up a little bit. So what kind of doctor is this guy and what kind of patients was he seeing? Like, was he seeing a normal medical practice or was he a doctor in a hospital? Like, how did this work?
He started as a general practitioner.
Okay.
And so he would see anybody for any type of ailments. He had patients of all different walks of life. His focus for the death, though, was older women.
He wanted to kill only older women.
Yes, that's where the discrepancy in numbers are. That he was convicted of all older women death, but he had patients that were younger that also died, but again, because he was incinerating all the bodies, there was no trace. He was forging their death certificates, etc.
Yeah, it's got to be tough, right? Because you're a doctor. Some of your patients are going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so.
But how do you incinerate their bodies? What if they wanted a normal burial?
Yeah, so that he was forging their death certificate. He was forging their last wishes for death. We'll even get into one of the stories where he's forging their will. That's actually what ended up doing him in or getting him caught. So
that is so wild, man. You know, like that's why you can't have one person in charge of everything.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like my girlfriend is in charge of the bank account, and then I spread everything else after that goes to other people. You know what I mean? She doesn't know where the life insurance is. She gets the bank, but not everything.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So the reason why he did this, and what I find is a familiar thing in a lot of these, is it all goes back to his mother. So when he was growing up, his mother had cancer, and they had a doctor that would come into the house and administer morphine to reduce the pain.
Mm-hmm.
And his mother ended up dying when he was 17 years old.
Of just cancer.
Right. But he saw the manipulation of her state once the doctor provided the morphine.
Oh, so she's in tremendous pain.
Mm-hmm.
She's miserable.
And
the doctor shows up and she's feeling better.
So do you think he rationalized it as he was actually doing these older women a favor?
So as I was reading the story, it kind of went both ways. Like, he saw that his mom was happy at times, but then also she would snap and be angry. And he couldn't figure out why
That's
the
called
morphine
being a woman. Just saying.
Why the morphine was giving her two different reactions.
No, it's just our birthright. It has nothing to do with morphine. It's our birthright.
Birthright. I like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, what was crazy? So he went to school to become a doctor. He got his license, in 1970. He started doing some general practice stuff. He actually already got in trouble for forging forging prescriptions for himself. He was self-prescribing Demerol to himself. And they ended up catching him. Of course, like any drug addict, you overdo the number of prescriptions. And they caught him. All they did was give him a 600 euro fine and send him to rehab for a couple of months. Did not revoke his license.
And this is early on in his career?
Yes, this was year one.
What could possibly happen with your doctor being a drug addict?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah, so that to me was, okay, red flag number one.
Okay, so slap on the hand.
Yeah. So then he has to move from his practice there. Of course, he gets terminated, let go. He goes and he decides that he wants to open his own general practice. I don't know how that's acceptable. You own your own practice after we caught you in somebody else's practice. So he opens his own practice and he starts servicing clients and making sure doing things. And that's when, and this happened in 1974. So there was a little lapse of when he went rehab. He was trying to figure out, I guess, find financing, set up his own practice. So 71, he gets in trouble. 74, he opens his own practice. Okay, 74 is when the deaths start.
Oh, coincidental. See, this is the sort of thing, I'm sorry to cut you off, Steve, but this is the sort of thing why healthy skepticism of authority is so important.
Yeah, right.
Why second opinions are so important.
Absolutely.
You know, it's like, I don't know, the guy, I'm sure he's a doctor. He must know what he's doing.
Exactly.
I'm sure he's not a junkie that's running from past crimes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so they start doing. He starts doing the general practitioner. He's overdosing his patients with them, and multiple times. The first investigation became from another doctor, and who she was constantly being asked, and she even started denying countersigning the incineration of these bodies.
Oh, he asked her to do it.
Because based on the stories I was reading, every incineration requires two.
That's good policy.
That makes good sense.
Checks and balances, yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And she was doing it initially?
And then she was like, listen, I don't care who you are, 20 bodies in a month doesn't make sense.
Uh-huh.
You know, if everybody, and she stated in her interview that he had more himself than the rest of the doctors she had combined that she was bringing, and she refused and had an investigation. Well, police investigated. There wasn't enough evidence. Okay, and this was in March 1998 that was happening. So he had already been doing it for 23 years, and I guess a
pile of dead bodies should be enough evidence. By the way,
absolutely, same person, same doctor, and they all have pretty much the same.
But these women are random. There's no particular reason why.
The only thing that they had in common was old age, and they picked Dr. Shipman.
Yeah, this is very odd.
So,
did he have a large forehead?
Oh,
yes, he did.
Yes, I
large
knew it.
forehead, Coke bottle glasses.
I told you. I'm onto something, people.
So they did that investigation in March 1998. 5 months later, after he got through after he was cleared of that charge, the taxi driver had the same concern that he was dropping off elderly patients that seemed in good health, and they were all ending up dead.
I've never been a taxi driver, but there must be obviously we know there's at least 250 bodies, right? But it's amazing that it's so blatant that even a taxi driver is like, this guy is not good at his job.
Yeah.
I keep bringing people here. They're not coming out.
That's pretty blatant because they don't notice anything. I mean, I've tried to rob them before in New York City and they didn't even know. They just let me off at the next stop. They're oblivious.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the whole thing. I've never ridden in a taxi. I'm the Uber person.
Yeah. You've never ridden in a taxi?
I've never ridden in a taxi.
How old are you, Steve?
I'm 35, grew up in LA, never ridden in a taxi.
LA, wow.
Yeah.
Never talking Louisiana?
No.
Is that what's going on?
Los Angeles. But never ridden in a taxi. But even with that, I know like taxi drivers aren't like, hey, I'm going to have one taxi driver for this city. So thinking if the same guy's like, man, I drop a lot of people here and they're all dying, and there's still an assortment of other taxi drivers. Like if he has enough candidates to say I'm concerned about all my riders are dead
for sure,
then
unless it's like the only thing, unless he was like a medical shuttle, but you would call it that. You wouldn't say a taxi.
So are they dying immediately so they're going to the office for the appointment? Are they dying immediately, or is he giving them like a take this twice a day type thing, and then they die later.
It's a subtle dosage that he's overdosing them over a period of time.
So how the hell would the taxi driver know this?
Because say he has a patient, she's dropping them off 1 or 2 times, and the next time she's dead, and he's reading it in the newspaper that the obituary. But I mean, your taxi driver's also reading obituaries. That's kind of morbid as well.
I guess what I'm struggling with is more reflective of me as a person, because I'm like, I can't imagine being that observant about the world around me. Right? Like I'm so focused on the things that are right in front of me. I probably like, it's amazing the things that I will not notice.
Yeah, and what I was thinking about as I was digging into it is I think of a taxi driver kind of as your barber and everything else. As you have you have a customer in your chair or in your seat, you're chatting, you're trying to build that rapport. Give me a good 5-star review, give me a good tip and everything. So they're building that rapport, and you're talking to, Joanne, and she's talking about her trip that she's going. She loves her grandkids. And then, she's like, yeah, I actually like you as a driver. Come pick me up next week. And you read in the newspaper, she's dead.
They must be calling him directly and pick me up. And, because when I think of taxi driver, I think of, I'm standing on a corner, I got my arm out, or I just call a yellow cab and some random dude picks me up.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, like I said, the taxi driver tells about the stories and everything. Do the same investigation. Okay, wasn't able to prove it.
Oh my God!
So now,
Sherlock Holmes was not around. That's what you're saying. Holy smokes!
5-month period. 2 different people in 2 different industries accuse this guy of the same exact thing, and the police decide not to dig deeper. 3 months after the second investigation's over, when they actually find probable cause to arrest him, they find out that 3 bodies after that second investigation happened within a month. He closed the gate. They closed the case and was like, they're never going to catch me, so let me go ahead and start killing
I'll
people.
ramp it back up. I'll go crazy now.
Absolutely.
I've been investigated twice. Nothing's happening. They can't catch me.
He probably thought he was infallible.
Of course. Criminal mastermind.
Bulletproof, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So
he's in a right position, though, as a physician.
Yeah.
You could get away with a ton.
250.
250.
Yeah, 250.
It's more than a ton of women.
Yeah. So how he got caught was his last murder was of a lady named Kathleen Gundy. Okay. Same thing, overdosing her on the diamorphine, everything. She actually ended up dying in her own house. Okay. But what ends up happening is her daughter, Angela Woodruff, actually got notice that her and her children were not in the will.
Oh.
And that there was a signature, assumingly from this Kathleen Grundy, that 386,000 euros were signed to Harold Shipman, Dr. Death.
Sure. Like that's like robbing the bank without even a mask on.
We have a winner.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I guess he kind of picked the wrong person, because Kathleen Grundy's daughter is a lawyer. And she's like, oh, you're going to try to pull this on me?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to tie you up. So doing all this, did the verification, checked signatures, found out it was fraudulent. Then he even said, no, I didn't overdose her. She had issues. She was already an addict. I have all this stuff in my medical journal.
Right.
Or in 1998, we started getting into computers. Well, he's doing his medical journal on the computers. What Mr. Shipman didn't know is there's an audit trail of everything you type into your computer. So his medical journal wasn't created until after the death, and once he found out he was under investigation for her.
Got it.
That must have been such a fun time for investigators when criminals didn't really understand how computers work, and you're like, oh, I'll get around this. I'll just put it in here right now.
Exactly.
Like, that must have felt so great to sit down in front of them and push the computer and go, no, you filled it out Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
And also imagine telling somebody, no, your mother was a junkie. My mom.
Yeah.
My mom was a drug addict.
Yeah, I would have known that.
I just missed that. I just missed it, I guess.
Yeah. It was pretty crazy that it went back and forth. Both the attorney and the lawyer, the daughter, and the police definitely put it down in front of him, and that's when everything unfolded.
Did he admit it?
And he admitted to that one. And what they ended up doing were trying to exhume some bodies, I guess, because some of his patients did die that were not incinerated. And then they also were able to find, which I didn't know, that they can test incinerated bodies as well.
What?
Whoa.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and they tested to find and found traces of incinerated bodies of diamorphine.
That's wild, man.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Seriously, that's possible.
Yeah, that's what they were saying in the case that
There is no perfect crime. There just is no
Apparently
perfect crime.
not. I thought once you were incinerated, cremated, whatever, that's it.
No, and
That's incredible.
Yeah, it really is.
And is it kennel or killing I would think that I just thought that wiped everything clean. Like, hey, you put it in here, it's so hot,
right? It's so hot.
Right.
Take it to the surface of the sun, type of thing, and
it's gone.
It's gone. Right? But they were still able to find it, and that's how they were able to tie 15 different murders to him. That here's everything. And why it says 250 is there are deaths that were related to him. He signed the death certificate, but they weren't able to have enough evidence to tag him to being the actual cause of the death.
So it's probably like they assume that he did it, right? Like all the evidence points to it, he just can't prove it.
Was there a way to figure out though how many wills he altered and how much money he
I'd love to know how much
ill-gotten,
money he got away with.
Yeah, so the only one that he actually did the will on was this Grundy, and that was the step that
sunk
slipped
him.
Yep, that's the one that slipped
I
up.
wonder what happened that made him go after the cash. Like
Maybe
obviously
he knew
it's
she was
debt or
well
something.
off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He had to have known she was well off. But that's ballsy to create a false will and forge a signature. Like, don't you think the family's going to contest that?
Like, I believe you, Steve, because you got 2 notepads and a laptop in front of you, so that automatically says you're authority on the subject. But I can't believe that it's the first one that he did.
Maybe we should get a second opinion.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to.
Absolutely.
Any red flags in your background?
So did he come clean to the other 14 once they sat him down?
Yes. So once all the evidence was in place, he did come clean of it. And the whole thing is, he ended up while he was in prison. They say that the guilt overcame him, and he ended up hanging himself in 1998.
I don't buy it. I don't buy that the guilt overcame you.
Sorry, in 2004.
I think if the guilt, how does the guilt not overcome you at 150? I think it's like because you got caught and now you don't want to do the time.
That's it.
Right? Like, or the shame, maybe shame, where it's like now I'm publicly being shamed, but it can't be the guilt of the act.
But how long was he incarcerated before he killed himself?
1998 to 2004 was January 13, 2004 is when he hung himself.
So you've got this guy that's clearly highly educated, probably lives very well off. Wouldn't you kill yourself at the thought of going into prison?
Yeah.
Not chilling out there for 7 years or 6 years and then deciding to do it?
It just can't be for that reason.
Did he get
right?
life or did he get death?
No, he got life.
It's
he
UK,
wasn't
I don't think there's a death penalty.
And
I could be wrong though.
And my thing is, he's probably a sociopath, and until the case is over, he's like, "Oh, I still can get out of this."
Oh, I bet you're right.
I absolutely get out of this. They're not going to be able to prove everything.
Yeah.
They're all narcissists.
That's a good point because I'm thinking he's in prison for 6 years, so the case must have been wrapped up for a while. But we all know how slow justice works, So
Absolutely. And
nobody cares about him anymore. Nobody's talking about him. The glare's off of him. He's not going to court anymore. All that's left with is the rest of his life in jail.
Yeah, now you're sitting there by yourself with your own thoughts, and you are now deemed a failure because you weren't successful at your murders and your success, and they caught you. So now what are you going to do?
Right.
And he's not treating that original pain that he had, which was his mother and everything. So he's not able to treat that anymore through himself. So he's not able to kill any more people.
I always question
away.
anytime we hear about people allegedly hanging themselves in prison. Do you know how impossible that is?
It seems like it would be.
There's nothing to hang it from, first of all. And, I mean, the ceilings, it's not like they're high.
Well, I watched The Wire, and I saw how they killed Avon Barksdale.
Right.
Or, excuse me, Dee, not Avon.
Yeah, that was a great show, by the way.
Yeah.
But, I'm not buying it. Like...
Yeah, I mean, but don't they, I thought that in prisons they changed all that stuff. That's why everything's nailed down, because people would flip their bed up and hang themselves with that. That's why your fabric isn't easily ripped apart, because they were using that stuff. I mean, they even talk about today, even with all the updates on how they limit people's ability to get stuff. I mean, shanks are being made out of the
they still get stuff in there.
Yeah.
It's amazing what you can put in the human butt.
It is.
It really is.
That's so funny that you brought this up.
I'm always bringing up the human butt, Laura.
I have had personal experience with pulling out an entire 8-ball of crack cocaine out of a woman's vagina. Yep. The bag was hanging out of her vagina, so it warranted a search. Of course.
Yeah.
A mini 9mm Glock out of a man's butthole. Yep. He fit that in there.
That is a
was it loaded?
keystering.
It was loaded.
Oh, come on, man.
Ready to go and loaded.
Come on.
And
how's that ready to go? I mean, 1 second.
Yeah. Well, he was clearly more limber than me.
Yeah.
So, he made it all the way into processing at the detention center. And I guess when they were strip searching him, they're like, I see something black. The butt of the gun was in his anus.
No.
And they took him
I like
to the
that you just
hospital.
completely froze the room.
Yeah.
Now.
So they immediately took him to the hospital, and the doctor had to withdraw that gun from his anus.
That's really
Me, on the other hand, had the pleasure of pulling the 8 ball of crack out of the vagina that insisted on trying to pee on me 2 or 3 times.
So I'm curious as to why you left the police force exactly.
Well, it was so glorifying. It was. So people will stick amazing things in amazing places.
Did this woman claim that the crack was not hers?
Yes. She said, I had no idea it was there.
No, she did not.
Yep. She goes,
solid.
In other words, insinuating I planted it or
of course.
something.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, this is the same defense as every 7-year-old across America.
Exactly.
I did not do it.
I
You're
read
holding the crayon in your hand.
I read a story similar to like finding in. It wasn't me. That lady got caught with drugs in her purse. The wind blew them in there.
Yes.
Interesting. Yes,
As you were walking and running down the street away from me, they blew into your purse. I got you. Okay.
It's very normal.
One of the most... I found a lot of drugs in a lot of crazy places. One of the craziest places I found them was in a baby's diaper. While the baby was wearing it.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Like packaged or free or?
In the little baggies. They were. There was a bunch of crack rocks in there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they were storing for selling it?
They were storing it in there thinking, they'll never look in a dirty diaper. And there was like kid. 10, 20. Yeah.
On the other side of that, as a customer, I don't want your dirty diaper, baby poop.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when you're a crackhead, you don't give a shit.
Points.
It could be wrapped in diarrhea. You don't care.
Yeah.
Oh, as long as it's in the baggie, I guess.
Yeah.
Scoop around.
Look how quickly you change your mind. You're like, I don't want it. Oh, actually, the packaging is okay, then I'm all right with it.
Exactly.
I'll just spray it off. I'm good.
So it's crazy, this stuff that people will put inside their bodies. And then the heroin balloons, too.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll swallow the heroin balloons, and then you have to get across the border in a certain period of time before you have to make a bowel movement, and then they'll come out. The problem is if the balloon burst in your body, you have more than the body can take, and it's technically an overdose, and you'll die. So you go in and, you're having a bowel movement, and then you pick your balloons out, you burst the balloon, it's wrapped in another plastic bag, and then that's the way they get it across. And those are called mules.
Yeah. And I've heard those stories before. And I am way too much of a neurotic to do any of that. Like, I just can't imagine sitting on a plane with a belly full of heroin, knowing that if one thing goes wrong.
Yeah. And we're talking, I'm not talking like 4 or 5 bags of heroin. I'm talking 30 to 40 that you're swallowing of heroin.
Like they string them together so that one comes out.
You're swallowing one at a time. So imagine taking, it's probably this big when you swallow it. So, because the balloon has to be expanded because the heroin's inside the balloon.
I'd have too much heartburn from anxiety that it just bursts up.
Forget it, man.
Yeah.
Forget it. No way.
Yeah.
Like you have your 2 choices: swallow a bag of heroin or let's put it in the tire. I'm going to tell you to put it in the tire.
Yeah,
yes,
tire.
I understand it might be a little bit more susceptible to being caught, but put it in the tire.
Yeah, I'm going tire.
That's way easy to get caught though, because then the dog smells it and you're done.
Yeah, and I get it. I know what they do. And again, like, it all comes back to, like, especially when we're talking about drugs and drug mules, like, that's that level of desperation.
It is.
Like, nobody's like, hey, you know what? Community college isn't going great. I think I'll go drug mule it. It's like there is no other, or it feels like there's no other option.
But I think they specifically pick people that are in desperate situations.
Oh, God, yes.
Single moms, they have no way to feed their kids. And, in Mexico and stuff, they're preying on maybe young girls or old women
Sure, people
You know,
you're not
because
going to
they're like,
profile, you're
oh,
not going to look
yeah,
at. Yeah,
they won't profile out, but man, it's dangerous, extremely dangerous.
there's a great movie called Maria Full of Grace.
I saw
which
that.
is about it's
Yeah.
about this, and it's
But
troubling, man.
the mule work
Yeah.
is crazy. So
Yeah. So one positive thing did come out of this case, and David Spiegelhalter actually used this case as a case study to say that statistical reporting for doctors needed better guidelines stuff. And one of his opening argument was in the difference between 1996 and 1998, the cases of elderly women that died from the age of 65 to 75 doubled.
Wow.
And he said that would have been a red flag.
Exactly.
And,
Wow.
And what would it have harmed us just to investigate?
Yeah, and I would assume that any reputable doctor, although it may be annoying, like I got to go down and do this interview and I got to justify all this stuff, but I would assume that any reputable doctor really would welcome something like this because it's about protecting people.
yeah, but when you look at this case in general, it doesn't meet the normal criteria that other serial killers have. For example, he's not getting that satisfaction of killing that person, right? Because they're dying days later.
Mm-hmm.
He's at random, right?
Yeah,
There's no
it's not
monetary
like a
gain.
personal connection.
No monetary gain, no anger or hatred towards a particular group.
But if it was mostly older women and if it was traced back, like I am curious because it doesn't feel like anger or
No.
hatred. It feels like he's replicating his mother's death over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Did he ever explain why he did this? Did he ever have a conversation? Because, like,
Yeah.
I get you said at the top where it's like he saw this doctor come and give his mother some relief,
Right.
and so it's like it's almost the opposite of anger and hatred. He's almost replaying this what in his mind is a kindness.
Well, that's what I thought. Is he
Yeah.
thinking he's doing these women a favor? But apparently they didn't have cancer. They weren't terminally ill people, right?
Correct.
They were just generally coming for a checkup.
Yeah. All these people that came into him, they were doing general checkups. They were just, hey, I'm going to the doctor. Of course, there's always this one like my knee hurts or whatever,
Yeah.
but it wasn't, hey, I know I have terminal cancer. Please take care of it and
Right.
walk me through the process to get healthy. It wasn't that. It was, hey, I have a general ill.
So what you're saying is if I go to the dentist, my butt shouldn't hurt when I leave.
Exactly.
But I love my dentist, and it always does.
It always does. I'm like, I didn't think that was right.
He tells me I got to see him every month. It's very bizarre.
Yes. I'll get a second opinion.
But yeah, when he did the interview, when he was trying to explain, and he did tell about the history with his mother, it was very convincing that was the reason that he was doing it. And like I said, him even as a doctor couldn't explain the different reactions that his mother had towards him, and he was trying to figure out while he was a young doctor what was the difference between her being nice and loving to him and him not doing anything different, and then her snapping and after the morphine being mad. So getting to it, the control was everything's the same. I'm going to act the same. There's nothing going on. The only difference is now she's mean or now she's nice. And, the psychological
constantly trying
pain
to figure out
he
that
had from
riddle.
some- yeah. But you're not.
What?
What confused me is, like you said, he's letting them go home. He's not seeing these people.
Right.
They're coming back to him and everything. And it just, okay, well, I didn't get enough to review over this patient because they ended up dying because I overdosed them.
Right.
Let me get a new patient.
Right.
So if they're dying at home, how is he controlling the manner of autopsy and disposal of their body? Because some of them got cremated, some of them
Because
didn't.
he's listed as the general practitioner and for it, and so
okay. And he says, "Oh, she wanted to be cremated."
Mm-hmm.
You see,
Yeah.
doctors have godly powers,
It's tremendous.
and that's why they
have.
have the Hippocratic Oath and stuff
Yeah.
that you hope that they use it
Yeah.
ethically.
Which is why we see so much of, not so much, I don't want to over exaggerate, but which is why we see when one of these sort of angel of death type people,
Yes.
they're able to go for so long and have such a deep, big impact because they are in this huge amount of this position of power where they can control so much,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and nobody considers them right away.
So I learned two major things: get two opinions, and also I had no idea, and I'm ashamed to say that you could get DNA and other evidence after the body's been cremated. I had no idea.
I had no clue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No idea.
Yeah, that's impressive.
And I'll tell you, have you ever seen a body being cremated?
No.
It's horrifying.
No.
It looks like a submarine. It's very cylinder, and it has a tray that comes out almost like a morgue tray, and the person goes in, typically in the bag or whatever, sometimes not, and they get put in there, and then you're cranking it up like you would a fireplace or something, and it gets crazy hot. Like it happens so quickly, but to go down to ashes.
What is the fuel that they use to make
It's-
it so hot?
It's an interesting question,
It's-
Steve. Are you
yeah.
planning something?
Yes.
No, that I don't know, because it was a system, like a
Okay.
chamber. And they literally, it looked like a knob on an old TV. They literally just turned the knob and the flame came up. So I would imagine it's some type of kerosene or some
Gotta
oil,
be, right?
some type of oil
Yeah.
type.
Yeah, I mean,
Propane.
because multiple fuels like gas and diesel have different
Yes.
ignite points, and they burn hotter. And that's there. I mean, what's burned so hot that you know it's going to incinerate everything?
Right.
Well, several years ago, I was engaged with a company that picked up animals that had passed away, and their owners wanted them cremated. So I would have to go pick up the animal and put them in a bag and bring them to the funeral home in the freezer, and then they would go from the funeral home to the chamber.
Okay.
And then I always wondered, like, how do you really know that that's your loved one's
Oh,
ashes?
sure, yeah.
Like, it could be some homeless guy down the street.
Yeah.
We can't possibly know that. So, I think people kind of just ask for the urn and stuff out of symbolism, but there's no way to really know unless apparently you test it after the fact. But I probably had, 20, 30 animals in this freezer, and they would just boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom. And then it goes out to, they pick an urn and it goes from there to the
Wow.
urn. And,
Yeah.
it's, I couldn't do it for very long. It upset me. I
Yeah,
can't
that would-
see the animal.
No.
If it was just a bag, I could do it. But when I had to put the animal in the bag, I was like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, it's special people that do that work. Like
Yeah.
it's important work. It really matters. It's no different than what we do.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody.
And I'm not
you
one of
know?
those special people. I am
Yeah.
special ed. However, I'm not special people.
One of the things that I thought, and maybe you can
Mhm.
shed some light on this, as being a cop, is how do you, as a cop, go to somebody after their person's been deceased for so long and be like, hey, I need to test your ashes because we believe they might have been a victim.
It's a search warrant.
After,
Yeah.
but I mean, think, Steve, you lost someone 10 years ago and you're reeling in that, and maybe you're starting to recover from that pain. And then I come to you and say, hey, now I need to drag that all back up to the surface because I
Right.
need.
So this is really interesting to me because, you watch movies and they're exhuming bodies, or
Yeah.
you read news stories and they're exhuming bodies. And I freely admit that I'm not a normal human being, but I never understood why people were bothered by it. Like, I'm like,
No, me either.
like, I understand the emotional, digging up the emotional part of it, like, oh yeah, and reliving it. I get that. But
Yeah.
I think, like, for me, I'm like, you can just throw me in the dumpster out
Yeah.
back. Like, I'm cool with
Yeah.
it, so my
the
thought is
body
like,
farm.
I really don't mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really, like, to me, it's like, so my mother passed away. If somebody came to me like, hey, like, we think that your mother
Yeah.
may have been a victim of a crime, I would be fine
Yeah.
with them digging her.
Yeah,
Yeah, let's
solve
cool.
it.
Let's see
Yeah,
what's going
let's
on.
do it. Yeah.
For sure, because
wouldn't
my
bother me
mother
either.
is gone and I
Yeah.
love her. She was the best.
Yeah.
The best. But if they needed to dig her up personally, but it seems to really upset some people.
It does. And I they say funerals are for the living, not for the dead.
Yeah.
And it's a ritual. It's kind of a ritual, no different
Sure.
than any other ritual from another thing. But a lot of people are going to different types of burial now. If you haven't noticed, a lot of people are going to out to sea,
Ooh, I like
and
that.
they're being let go out to sea. A lot of people are being cremated because they're just looking at it as, why am I going to pay 10 grand for a funeral so she can go in a box and decomp?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So to speak on what you're saying about that, I did. So when my father passed away, we had him cremated, and one of the things that my dad and my mom had talked about is my dad was a big skydiver. He loved to skydive, so he wanted to do an ash dive.
That's cool.
That's
Where
cool.
you
That's
got
super
it. So
cool.
I was the person that did the ash dive for him.
Oh,
They gave
that's
me
awesome.
a tube of his ashes, and as I jump out of the plane,
how emotional.
well, they were on the ground. We go through the how it's all going to go down. I wasn't certified to skydive by myself, so a tandem instructor was going to tap me when it was good for me to do this. His friends that were skydivers were going to dock on us. I'd get the tap from the tandem instructor, and then I'd release. Well, the tandem instructor had to tap on me 4 or 5 times because I was not ready.
Oh.
And it was more the emotional part of it.
I
It
can't
was
imagine.
like,
Yeah.
I know this is time, but
I gotta let him go.
I'm holding
Yeah.
my dad.
Yeah.
And sorry, I'm getting emotional
No,
about it.
you
But
don't apologize,
but
man.
I
That's
didn't
heavy.
even have a good relationship with my dad, and I felt connected with him at that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But how did you feel after you did it? Did you feel like I did exactly as he wanted?
Yeah, I had the
Yeah.
biggest smile on
Yeah.
my face when I landed.
Yeah.
But that moment I couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
That's hard, man.
Yeah,
It's
that
really
is.
hard. There's always these
Absolutely.
moments when we're grieving.
Yeah.
Went through the funeral process. There are a couple different moments that happen. Like for me, my best friend growing up all through childhood, he passed away when we were 29, and I did okay keeping myself together until I saw him in the casket at the funeral home, and then it's like I just sort of collapsed. And the same thing with my mother. There was a moment, same thing where it was like, oh no, and like you just fall to pieces. It's hard to tell. You never know, but it makes sense because you're at that moment where this is what my father wanted, and this is the last moment, maybe connection where I'm doing one of his wishes. It's heavy, dude.
Yeah.
It's really heavy. Special though that you're able to do that for him.
Yeah,
That's cool.
And it was great, and like I said, once I was down on the ground, it was perfect, and I was like, man, I did what he wanted.
Yeah.
But it was so hard to do it at that moment.
Oh,
Like I said,
yeah.
he had to tap me 3 or
Yeah.
4 times,
yeah.
and it was just all right. And I use that terminology, but I had to jump out of that plane again.
Right.
Like when
Yeah.
I did it, I was like, okay, jump out of the plane.
Right.
So
Have you ever skydove before that?
yeah, so I've done tandems and everything.
Okay.
So when I turned 16, that was my dad's gift to me.
Oh, that's cool.
To skydive by yourself, you have to be 18. But because skydiving actually just in I think 2005 no longer became an experimental sport. So the military's doing it. You're jumping out of planes, but
Yeah.
it's an experimental sport all the way up until 2005. So they didn't have real strong regulations on how and when you could do your skydiving. So you could go through your
Training and all
yeah, I forgot what the name of the training is, but to do it by yourself, you have to do 21 like instructor-led
that.
dives.
Right.
That you're doing a tandem, then you're doing you do like 15 where you're on radio and they're talking you through the steps you're checking while you're under canopy and stuff like that. So I've done my tandem. I'm actually also airborne qualified, so I did it in the Army. I know how to do a PLF and all that stuff, but not certified to jump by myself. No.
Okay, right on.
Wow.
Yeah, because I love my dad very much. My dad was airborne as well. And if that was his last wishes, we're going to have to figure something else out, Dad. Like, I'm going to have to shoot you up,
Yeah.
because I can't come down.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll continue being a little bitch with you then.
Yeah.
And not do that. So thanks for watching today's Talking Decon. Please don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so that you're notified. Don't forget to follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Crime Scene Cleaning. Have a great day.